Does freedom of speech actually exist in Canada? I think it's a valid question in 2024, and we'll take another look at that today on Don't Talk TV. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. Now, before we get into the meat of the episode, last week I did a live stream. I'm thinking of doing live streams once a month. We got about 10 answers to a poll. 75% were in favor of live streams, 25% weren't interested in live streams. Leave a comment in the comment section if you feel one way or the other. But I'm thinking I'll probably do them anyway, because even if you can't tune in for a live stream, we have consistently over the years had a number of people say they prefer a longer format. And really, the only way I can actually do a longer format is if it's live stream, just because it's unscripted, it's more casual by the very nature of it, and there's not all the editing that's required when we do these pre-recorded episodes. So we will probably be doing that about once a month. We'll decide on exactly which week of the month, but we'll keep it the same, like either the second week or the third week or even the first week. Maybe that'd be easier to keep in mind and keep on schedule. We're also considering moving, because at one point Wednesday seemed to be very popular, but it feels like it's not as popular anymore. Most of our views seem to come later in the week, so we did another poll during the live stream, and by a slim majority, or a plurality really, because none of the options got more than 50%, but the most votes went to Thursday evening. So again, leave a comment in the comment section if you have a strong feeling one way or the other, but as of right now, unless we get a whole bunch of responses suggesting that something else is preferred, we're likely to start moving Don't Talk TV to Thursday evenings and doing a live stream once a month. We'll post that on all of our socials once we've made the final decision on which date and when we'll be doing the live streams. So that brings us to today's episode. This will be another fairly quick one, just given how busy it seems like I always am, which I think I've touched a bit on, not this past live stream, but the previous one, of why things are so busy these days. But do we have free speech in Canada? So the too long don't read version is, no, we don't. I think we did at one time. There was a time where even speech that was deemed the most offensive by the majority of society or by the people in power was still not illegal. And this came up during last week's live stream. People were asking about Ernst Zundel and what's changed since that time. At the time of Mr. Zundel, I mean, he was ultimately acquitted for his views discussing gas chambers, his views that there were no gas chambers in the Holocaust. Now, the law's changed since that time to take away some of the defenses that he had available, although he was charged. So arguably, even when you get punished by the process, even if you're ultimately acquitted, is it still really legal to speak contrary to what the prevailing wisdom is or what the accepted narrative of certain events is? Do you really have that freedom? Now, the reason I say there's no freedom of speech in Canada is because, in my view, for something to be a right, there has to be no consequences for it. A lot of people say, oh, you have the freedom of speech, you just have to accept the consequences, if even including being arrested and sent to jail for if you say something we don't like. Or you have medical freedom, you just have to accept the consequences of not being allowed to go to restaurants, getting fired from your job, not being allowed to go to movie theaters, etc., if you don't take the jab. Well, that's not a right. I mean, if you're going to have liberties, and especially if you're going to go to jail for exercising that right, then it's not a right. So what we might have in Canada is limited free speech, but is that even free speech when you're only allowed to speak within certain parameters? And it seems that those parameters are slowly tightening in scope. There isn't a very broad freedom of things that you're allowed to say, although at least in private conversation, there still is freedom of speech. So in the privacy of your own home, among friends, generally speaking, there is still a certain amount of freedom. But two more examples came up in the past couple of weeks that I think highlight this. And again, it's people expressing things that many find offensive and being criminalized. So essentially, offending people is criminal as long as it's on certain topics, right? So as we saw with the Olympics, doing things that are offensive to Christians or offensive to God, that's fine. Now, granted, that's France, but I think we could all be in agreement that if the exact same performance was put on in Canada, say the Olympics were in Canada again, and they had the same sort of opening and closing ceremonies, I think everyone can agree there would be no prosecution ever of that. That would be deemed acceptable. And, I mean, apparently burning down churches isn't even considered unlawful, or at least the police are, quote, unable to solve, unquote, those cases after all this time. Not one that I'm aware of, not one of the 200 churches that have been burnt down, not one of those cases have been solved. And as we've seen before, saying, I hate white people, and then punching a white woman in the face, not considered a hate crime. But then when we get onto certain topics, that's when you can go to jail just for posting things on Twitter. So that what I'm referencing here is outlined in this Globe and Mail article titled BC Woman Arrested After Racially Offensive Social Media Content, RCMP says. So notice, I mean, we don't know exactly what she said because, as we'll see, the RCMP don't share the Twitter handle or the posts, but it's a racially offensive social media content. So it's not that she was calling for genocide or to kill people. What we have here is it says, a Chilliwack, BC woman has been arrested over what police are describing as racially offensive content she shared via social media. Police say the woman was arrested on August 7th, but has since been released to appear in court at a later date while prosecutors consider several possible recommended charges. Police declined to share the suspect's name or the account she allegedly used to make the posts. Now, this is what I think is especially noteworthy, is that this prosecution came about as a result of numerous tips that the RCMP received, and they acted on all of them. And they said, we've gathered all the information that we are receiving from the public, as well as doing our own investigation. I think that's noteworthy because it doesn't appear that the police are going out actively searching for people who are guilty of wrongthink. They're relying on the citizens to report them. And it puts one in mind of other previous regimes where not in Canada, but other regimes in the world where the people were, shall we say, strongly encouraged by the powers that be to inform on each other and denounce each other to the state for expressing things that the state did not accept. Now, we're not talking about whether that's right or wrong. I'm just talking about the state of the law and making a couple comparisons. But I think it seems that most Canadians are in favor of this. Different people may have different views. Again, we're not getting into the philosophical, is this good or bad, just looking at what the law in Canada is currently. Now, the other case I had in mind was from Kitchener, so a little bit closer to here in Stratford. This case where offensive flag under investigation in Kitchener, Ontario. So it seems that this individual didn't post anything or say anything. Their expression was the flying of this flag on their house. Now it's blurred out, but even with the blurring, it's clear I can see that this is what's called the Reichskriegsflagge, which is of the German Empire and then the Nazi Germany as well. It's the war flag and the flag used by the armed forces in times of war. So it's not the typical Nazi flag, but obviously clear Nazi association. And in the middle, where it's blurred out, there would be a swastika. There's then it has a cross on it and then an iron cross up in the corner. So something very clearly linked with the Third Reich. And what we have here is that the Waterloo Regional Police Service says it's investigating reports of an offensive flag at a Kitchener, Ontario home. While they did not specify what was on it, photos shared with CTV News show a Nazi military flag flying outside a home on Sterling Avenue South. And in a media release, police said, while individuals have the right to freedom of expression under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, offensive expression rooted in hate has no place in Waterloo Region. Now, as we've looked at in past episodes, and you can check the show description for links to those, the laws in Canada, I mean, there's hate crime laws that make it unlawful for you to advocate genocide or to stir up hatred against particular groups. I don't believe that it's enough to offend people, but the police seem to be taking it in that way, that mere giving offense is enough to make these charges out. So it'll be interesting to see how these charges play out in court, whether they do play out in court. It seems that an awful lot of these hate crime charges result in guilty pleas for whatever reason. I mean, I have no involvement in the defense of these cases. That's between those individuals and their lawyers. But these laws of late haven't been particularly tested from what I've been able to see, given that they frequently result in guilty pleas. For example, there was one up in Kingston, I believe, where an individual had posted a bunch of small posters or stickers, and he may have been able to advance a defense of that the things he was saying were true, but he opted simply to plead guilty. So the law wasn't tested in that regard. But this video isn't legal advice. As always, if you need legal advice, you need to speak to a lawyer about the specific circumstances of you and your case. So you should call a lawyer. If you want me to be that lawyer, my contact information is listed below. We're always interested in show topic suggestions, so please leave a comment in the comment section or send an email to the email address listed below if you have one of those. And if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.